Hi and welcome to the Delivery Manager Daily, and in this episode I want to do a video version of a podcast that I've already recorded. So if you go onto Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from, you'll be able to listen to the episode What Makes a Good Consultant, and I'll put the link somewhere on screen. And I wanted to just talk about that a little bit further, talking about what makes a good consultant. So if you're a management consultant already, or you're looking to get into management consultancy, this might be a useful video for you to just get you to think about what actually makes a good consultant. And it's always not just the obvious things, but I wanted to talk through some of the more subtle and nuanced things that you start to kind of understand and often forget about or take for granted when you become a consultant. So maybe you're a graduate getting into consultancy for the first time, but I wanted to just talk through today what makes a good consultant. So I guess one of the first things is just being mindful that you're a product. So it's often difficult to sort of get your head around at first, but you're being charged out at probably 4 figures plus per day to a client, and that can be a bit shocking. That might not be in correlation to what you earn, by the way, but you're a product and you are being purchased to provide a range of services and consultancy type advice, and you're a product, and you should be mindful of that when you're on a client site, the things you do, the things you say, the way you present yourself. So we talk about thinking, just, being mindful of being on a client site. And a quick anecdote, because it always helps kind of set the scene. So a client saw a pool of consultants. They were sitting around a desk on the client site. Let's just say they're all being charged out to the client £1,000 a day. There's 10 of them, so 10 grand a day around this table. And they're all laughing and joking about the night before and how much they'd had to drink, and some of the conversations that they'd had were a bit kind of not really fit for work, and they were being really loud, and they were bragging about being hungover and sort of expensing the drinks on the client account. And the client looked over and thought, I'm paying 10 grand a day for what I'm just witnessing there, and fired them all. Now, that type of thing, that is a real anecdote, a real story, but is often forgot about when you're a consultant. And maybe you're with your team, you're away from home, it's lonely, so you look for that kind of relationship within your team, and maybe you're just having, from your perspective, a bit of a laugh, a bit of banter in the morning before you're about to do a grueling 10-11 hours worth of work, but being mindful about who's listening and who's around you. So think about, not doing your expenses in front of the client or on client time, and think about kind of how you talk about clients and competitors and other vendors, and just being a little bit mindful that you're a product. If you go and buy something off the shelf, you expect it to work, you expect it to be quality. It's exactly the same thing as a consultant, right? So just be a little bit considerate about how you conduct yourself. And that leads me neatly on to point number 2 of what makes a good consultant. And that's the way you look. Now, this is contentious, and we could get into a whole debate about kind of are suits out of date or old-fashioned, and does it really matter what you wear anymore when the world's changed so much? And all that's fine, and I get that, and people have to be comfortable. But I do think also that, again, because of that point of you're a product, you should act and as well as look professional. What does looking professional mean? I don't know, and it's one that no matter what you say, you're going to get a kind of rebuttal from a pool of people. My own opinion is that you should be always smart and always not look like you've been dragged through a hedge backwards. I think COVID with hybrid working has got everyone far too comfortable, and I think the whole joggers and tracksuits and trainers, it's all very Shoreditch, but actually, when you're on a client site, just think about and mimic. I heard this I can't take credit for this, it was from a colleague. We're doing this consultancy training in-house at the minute for one of the companies that I work for, and he said something brilliant, and it was you should mimic the client. So obviously, if you rock up in a 3-piece suit and a bowl hat, and the client's fairly relaxed, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb. Equally, if you're working in a particular sector where formal wear is appropriate, you rocking up in your tracksuit is equally going to make you stick out like a sore thumb. So being a little bit thoughtful about how you look, and just regardless of how comfortable people are in hybrid working and remote working, and the argument on doesn't really matter how you look, it's about the thing, I don't think that cuts it. So point number 2 is think about how you look and how you present yourself as a consultant. Point number 3 is about, and a lot of these are characteristics that just being a good human being, right? You can translate them. Do as you say you're going to do. So as a delivery manager, I think it's really important when I'm talking about sort of dates and commitments and contracts and things that you commit, and you commit properly, and you don't give wishy-washy consultancy answers. The amount of times that I've been fortunate enough to laugh and joke with clients who get the whole consultancy thing, and it's like trying to staple jelly to a tree. But at some point you've got to commit, and I think you should be respectful of the relationship that you have with the client. And if you're going to commit to a date, or you're going to say you or your team is going to do something, then you should do it, and that should be really a focused priority. Because the minute you start committing to things or say you're going to do things and then ultimately you don't, you just set that seed of doubt in everyone's mind, and that can really impact your kind of credibility as a consultant. So really think and really commit to the things that you're saying, and be a little bit kind of just being true to yourself and the team, right? It all sounds very aspirational, but you want people to do as they say they're going to do. So that type of characteristic is really important, and there are a few others as well that are kind of wrapped up in this point. So doing as you say you're going to do, just being direct and straight and not wishy-washy, being respectful, but obviously you're there to kind of do a job and cut through any kind of political treacle that the client might have. So being straight and direct and open with people, and being kind of easy to get on with, and being approachable, and not being closed off or having this blinkered attitude of I'm just here to write code, or I'm just here to deliver a Gantt chart, I think is really important. It's that kind of notion of business is built on relationships. And I think that if I look at kind of, and this will sound a bit disparaging, but if I look at some of the younger people coming into the industry that I work with and personally coach, one of the skills that are often hugely missing is that ability to kind of build relationships and that relationship building capability. So many people don't have it, and it's so important, because otherwise you just can't communicate at all, and therefore you're not part of that bigger solution. And as a consultant, you're expected to have these laser sharp kind of characteristics. So one of the things I talk about and do and encourage, I think I did a DevOps discussion actually, and we were talking about software engineers getting a kind of a seat at the table, right, to be able to talk about projects and be involved. You've got to take accountability for how you come across. You can't just start pointing fingers and saying, well, no one's listening to me, or I was dismissed, or I made a point and no one listened to it. Really kind of critique yourself and think, are you as much as you could be as a character? And I know we sway into the conversation of, are you introvert, are you extrovert, are you confident? And people might say, oh, it's very easy for you to comment, Mario, you're confident. And I don't think I'm that confident, actually. I'm trying like everyone else, right? But I think you have to take accountability for having those core kind of characteristics: being presentable, being approachable, doing as you say you're going to do, just being decent, right? Being straight and direct, and taking accountability for yourself as a consultant, being charged out at £1,000 a day. And then that probably leads me on to a couple of the final things that I think are really important. And I talked about it just then, taking accountability. It's very easy to kind of, the term I've coined, although I think I've stolen it from someone, is Teflon shouldering responsibility. And I think as a consultant, along with saying as you say you're going to do, when things go wrong, and as a delivery manager, this is something that I encourage all our delivery managers to kind of do in the team or in the community of practice. You can listen to the last YouTube video that I did on that. But making sure that you take accountability. So when something goes wrong, own it. And in your field, own if it's a mistake that you've made, or sometimes you even have to take accountability as a collective. This is something that I really struggle with, because I was never one for working in teams. I always like to kind of do things on my own. But as well as being taking on, the blame if something goes wrong, sometimes that is your job. If you make a personal mistake, there's nothing better than just quickly owning up to it. And I have, you'll notice me pausing and falling for words here, I've taken a long time to become good at that. Just putting up your hand and say, actually, I fucked that up. And as you get better, there's a little interesting correlation between you make fewer mistakes, and therefore it becomes even more difficult to admit when you make one, and usually those mistakes are huge. And that's difficult, but there's nothing better than just being able to say, look, I've made a mistake, here's what I'm going to do to correct it, and I think that's a really important characteristic, and not blaming your team or the person to the left or the right of you or the company or the client, and just thinking about taking culpability and accountability and not being the whole Teflon shoulder thing. So just talking about the characteristics then of a consultant, so I think it's made up of those kind of the technical kind of chops, technical acumen, those people skills, things like the characteristics we've talked about, like accountability, also being an expert in your field, but being mindful that you can't be an expert of everything. So we come on to the last and my most favourite thing, which is the bullshit. So I make a thing, having worked in consultancy for a while, contentious I'm going to be, and some of you watching this will know what I'm talking about or who you are, but consultancy often and historically has had a bit of a name for itself for being full of bullshit, and that's because you've got these young, often inexperienced but highly academic and capable young professionals being flown into an organisation, bums on seats, tens of them, dozens of them, in a field that they know nothing about, but they often are rich with the characteristics that we talked about earlier. They are very kind of go-getting, professional, relationship building, capable and quick learning type folk. So they're able to wing it. And that winging it will only get you so far. And often consultancy's had a bad rap because, you've got 10 people working on a huge complex transformation program in the world of, I don't know, I'll pick something at random, say finance. Know nothing about finance at all. And they're all designing target operating models and delivering 50-page slide decks. I made and have made many, many jokes on that, and have been in that situation, being thrust onto a client site and not really being comfortable with talking about what I'm there to talk about. And probably about 4 years ago, I did a talk, Tech First, and I'll put a link to that, and it talks about the kind of bullshit type approach around consultancy. And I think that for a long time consultancy has that, it's been mired in that, and I think that's still a little bit true today. And I think that one of the biggest things that you can do as a consultant is, firstly, don't try and wing it. If you don't know about something, don't talk about something. One of your skills that you'll need to develop is knowing where to signpost someone and guide someone to an expert. That's equally as valuable as trying to wing it yourself. So if you don't know about cloud or you don't know about architecture, just don't talk about it. You'd be better off building relationships with those that do and signposting the client or your colleagues and peers to those experts. You'll have as much credibility doing that as you will being the expert yourself. However, if you bullshit your way through it, and I know people that do this on a daily basis, you know who you are, ultimately you'll have zero credibility. And another anecdote to kind of finish this very quick sort of podcast on being a good consultant. I was on a client site where there was a small team of us, and a client was vehemently, we'll say delicately, slagging off one of my colleagues and basically suggesting that this person didn't know what they were talking about, and indeed they didn't know what they were talking about, and having to kind of manage that situation behind the scenes. And to this day, the person that I'm talking about has zero idea that this went off, but that credibility is something that you can take a long time to build and lose like that. So make sure as a consultant that you're straight and true in terms of what you know about and what you don't know about. So that's very quickly talking about just a bit of, I wanted to just add a little bit of content and depth to the podcast, being a good consultant, and I'm doing some training with loads of consultants sort of this year to kind of just go through some of these key principles and behaviours, and maybe I'll do another follow-up video. But if you're interested in getting into consultancy and wanting to talk more about some of these characteristics, get in touch with me on Twitter. I'm doing a lot with my fingers today, right? Get in touch with me on Twitter at MarioDC. Follow the blog, the podcast, mariosblog.co.uk, and you can find this on YouTube and Spotify too, the Delivery Managed Daily. Thanks for watching. Happy New Year.